Dear students, I welcome you back to this course on geometric design. We are going to discuss further the points where we have left in the first course. In the first course, what we have covered is that we have covered the definitions of geometric design. We have talked about the needs and benefits of that geometric design, which we are going to achieve on the basis of a good planning and design or the construction of a facility. Then we talked about the broad categorization of the various controlling factors, and finally we started discussing about the controlling factors and we talked about the uses there, and we have looked at there can be different type of uses depending on the land use, depending on the area in which the facility is going to be constructed, or whether it is the connectivity within the city or across the cities. So, when we are looking at this type of aspects, then we are also going to continue with the rest of the factors here, and today in this particular interaction we are going to talk about users, the projection of data, and as I said in the previous interaction, the data here we are going to talk in terms of the land uses, population, vehicular numbers, etc., the road classification, and finally we will be touching upon the traffic volume, which probably is going to be continued in the further interactions. So, let us look at the first thing for the today's interaction, that is the users. What type of users are going to be there on a road? That is what we are talking here. Now, when you are talking about these users, we can have the various vehicles which can be defined as motorized and non-motorized, and the pedestrian will be a separate category because they are not being driven by any fuel. No fossil fuel is being used, they are using their own energy. So, we can have motorized users, non-motorized users and pedestrians on any of the road facility. Now, when you talk about this categorization, what is the requirement of talking about this categorization is that all of these users, they are going to be varied in their sizes. If you talk about even in the case of motorized vehicles, in those motorized vehicles you will find that you have a bicycle which is quite small in size, and you have a truck which is quite big, and if you talk about a multi-axle truck, then it is going to be further big. So, when you have these type of different vehicles, what it is going to make a difference is in terms of their dynamic and kinematic characteristics. What is the amount of power which is going to be there with which these vehicles are moving? What type of steering is going to be there in these vehicles? These different things are there, and when you are talking about these things, then what you are looking at is basically the performance of a vehicle on a road. And this performance of a vehicle, if I talk in terms of a steering, is going to be important in the form of a radius which is going to be provided at any turning or a corner. So, that is going to make a difference. You cannot have the same radius with which a bicycle turns and then you say the truck also has to turn there, is not going to happen. When you talk about the non-motorized vehicles, then again there are different varieties of non-motorized vehicles are there. You have bicycle, you have a cycle rickshaw, you have nowadays the e-cycle rickshaw is also there, or then you may have animal drawn vehicles. So, all of these things are there. The one thing which is there is that they are relatively small in size, and at the same time the speed is quite low. You will find that at the maximum the speeds which are going to be there may be less than 20 kilometers per hour or 25 kilometers per hour. Similarly, when you look at the pedestrians, they are the various totally specific entity on a road. They may be moving all along the road, they may be crossing the road, and that is where the facilities are required in terms of sidewalks or the crossing facilities. One thing which is being written here in both of these cases is the segregation, and this segregation is important. The reason being, if they are interacting with the vehicle, then this interaction with vehicle that may be hazardous in nature. So, it may cause a safety concern, and this safety concern is going to be more for the non-motorized or the pedestrian people rather than for a vehicle. And that is the reason that these two category, they are also being defined as vulnerable road users. When you look at on the side the photographs which have been made available, what you can see is that there is first one where the whole of the carriageway is being utilized by N type of vehicles. So, there is no such segregation where it says that such type of vehicle is to move in a particular lane, though a footpath has been provided at the side maybe, or a cycle track may be provided at the side, which can be utilized by those specific users. But when you look at the another photograph, what you found is that there is a carriageway on the right hand side. It has been separated out here. So, a segregation has been done by way of providing a median sort of a thing, which is also being developed as a part of a arboriculture, and then you have a cycle track separately for cyclists, and then finally a footpath for the pedestrians. So, the exclusive use facility is also there, or a mixed use facility is going to be there. And in that sense, when you talk about this mixed use facility, now the different works are going on, wherein even the LRT system can come up on this roadway, and you can have the pillars here, and there can be an elevated system which can be provided, and through that right of way can be provided to another system. So, that is also a possibility. Now, when you are looking at these users, then as per IRC 3, it says that you need to talk about a design vehicle. And when you say design vehicle, and when you are looking at a different type of vehicles, then all of these vehicles, they are going to be distinguished by way of their dimensions, as I already said an example of bicycle versus truck, by way of the weight, though this weight is important in terms of the pavement design more. So, what is the axle load, what is the weight of a vehicle which is there, the steering which is going to be there is more important in terms of the turning movements, and the kinematics which is going to talk about the performance of a vehicle in different classifications of roads, in different terrain conditions, or in any situation which is going to be prevailing on a system. Now, when you look at these design vehicles, then these design vehicles are going to be decided on the basis of the terrain, the topography of the area. It is going to be decided on the basis of the type of the land uses which are there, which will define that what type of vehicle are going to be there more in that area as compared to another category. Like as I said, if it is an industrial area, then you may have trucks more than the other vehicles. The importance of a road is also going to define that what type of vehicles, and the economics can also govern. So, there can be different factors which can look at it. Now, here in this chart or the photograph which is being given here, what you can see is a different type of vehicles has been shown. The first one, which is defined as type 2, that 2 means there is a one front axle and one rear axle, and that is what the definition is for this type 2. When you say it is type 3, along with the one front axle, you are going to have 2 rear axles here. When you say it is type 2 S1, now this S1 is actually a semi-trailer condition. So, you have this main vehicle which is also being attached with the semi-trailer, and that is where when you say type 2, it means it has a front axle and a rear axle, and then in the case of a semi-trailer, 1 is being written, that means it has one axle at the back, and that is where the combinations can be there as type 2 S2, type 3 S1, type 3 S2 and so on. The another categorization which can be there where the trailer is there. So, this vehicle which is being there, it is being attached to the main vehicle, and that is where it is a trailer combination. So, truck trailer combination, tractor trailer combinations, like combinations can be there. So, here also you have the axles being defined as 2-2 or 3-2 and so on, which as I have defined above, you can understand and you can make it out that what type of axles are being provided in these cases. Now, when you come to the projection of data, and I repeatedly said that this projection of data is going to be not only to the road users who are there, but the people who are around and who can be a potential road user at some point of a time in even future, not if today, or the land users activities which are going to be there. So, we need to see at how many vehicles are there, what is the population which is there, and what are the land use and activities which are going to be there. The reason being that when you are talking about these vehicle numbers, Now, these vehicle numbers, they are going to be generated or they are going to be attracted by the land uses or the activities in an area. And when they are being attracted to an area, what type of trend is there of their movement, at what time the peak is coming up, or in which direction the movement is more. All of such things we are going to look at, and it needs to be looked at, because the facility which you are going to provide in a particular direction or in an area is going to be dependent on these data, or the location of the concentration of various things. You may find that at a certain location more of the trucks are there because there is a company and these trucks have to get in, but there is no space inside. You may find that the space needs to be provided outside also for their parking. So, some space gets dedicated to that also. When you look at the population, the dispersal versus concentration is probably going to define the type of transportation facility or the system which can be provided in those particular areas. If you have more of the concentration, the high densely populated area is there, then probably the public transport is going to be a very good thing. And if you provide the dedicated facilities for public transport, is what probably as a traffic planner or engineer you should look at, and that will be helpful to the population in that area. So, this population also, where type of population, if there are more of say women, there are more of elderly people, or there are more of children in an area, or the area is having educational facilities. So, you have to look at the requirements for that. When you are looking at these projections, this can be done with the help of time series data which is available. Say you are talking about the vehicle numbers, the vehicle numbers they may be available with the RTO office for different years, and from there you can make it out what is going to happen in the 5th or 10th year now, or it can also be correlated with the industrial growth or the GDP of an area and so on. So, there can be different such indicators. In that direction, if you want, you can look at an IRC 108 for the projection of various elements which we are going to look at, and specifically the vehicles. Now, when you come to the classification of the roads, then there are different ways in which the roads can be classified. So, we are now starting with the road based factors. The first one can be the location based. So, if they are being provided in an urban area, so we classify them as urban roads. If we are providing in the rural areas, then they can be rural highways or they can be rural roads. So, there are these two classifications can be done. And in the case of rural roads, one thing which you must be knowing about is a PMGSY, that is Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, which is totally related with the connectivity to be provided to the villages which otherwise have not been connected by the rural highways or the village roads, which falls into the category of rural highways. The another one classification is on the basis of their functional value, and this is quite important and is being used extensively. Even our road development plans is starting something from 1927 onwards. We have been talking in this area only with some commutations and permutations of these categorizations. So, what we can have is expressways, which can also be defined as an intercity connecting expressways or an urban expressways. These are the two ways they have been defined. Then national highways, state highways, district roads and village roads, and within the district roads again we can have the major district roads or other district roads. We are going to talk about this in some length further. Then in the case of urban areas, we can have arterial roads, then a classification is sub-arterial roads, collector roads and the local streets. And all of these classifications when we are looking at, and when we will be talking about this further, you will see that we will be talking in terms of the type of connectivities which have been provided by these roads. What is the amount of traffic which is going to be moved on these roads, at what speed the movement is going to be there, what are the areas or regions they usually try to cover in terms of their connectivities, are there any controls in terms of coming or going out of these systems, or who are the authorities who are controlling these type of roads. On the basis of these factors, we are going to see that how these two classifications which have been talked above, they are going to be different, or within a classification how roads are going to be different from each other. Another one is a load carried in tons, that can also be considered depending on that how much loads are being carried in a particular year. traffic volume in terms of a commercial vehicles per day, and when we say here the commercial vehicles per day, we are talking about all those commercial vehicles which are having a laden weight more than 3 tons. So, if we are talking about this more than 3 tons laden weight, they are in short being defined as CVPD. So, there can be 6 categories in this area, and that can be something like 0 to 15, 15 to 45, 45 to 150, 150 to 450, 450 to 1500 and more than 1500 CVPD. That is how these categories are there, and they have been used in the design, and more specifically in the case of rural roads, these are being utilized. Weather connectivity is another important aspect, and now our government is also looking at all of the roads, these should be all weather roads, and you must have heard about the project which is going in Uttarakhand, the Char Dham project, where all the connectivities of the Char Dhams, they are trying to make it all weather roads. Surfacing is one another classification, wherein we can say that there can be a black top surface which is usually bituminous, or white top surface which is a cement concrete surface. There may be a possibility that we can classify them on the basis of the paving being done at the top surface or not. So, they have the paved surfacings or unpaved surfacings, and sometimes we are going to use pavers or blocks in those particular areas where the traffic is not too high. Then these are the possibilities which can be looked at. So, this can also be a one separate categorization under the surfacing. Now, let us come to the functional classification back. As I said that this is one classification which is also being used in our road development plans, and in the last development plan, that is the third plan which was there the development of these particular roads, they have been classified into different categories like tertiary, secondary or the rural roads. So, we are going in that direction, but we are not going to elaborate on that because that is not a scope of discussion here today. So, when you talk about the expressways, as you can see, this is a one wide facility which is being provided, which is of course a multi-lane facility with the median in between which can be wide, and then the highest of speeds can be there on these particular roads, and they can be as high as 100 or 120 kilometers per hour. They are going to connect the major cities or the major traffic generators, and because they are the high speed facilities, they should be mostly grade separated facilities. Then the full access control is being provided, that means the entry or exit is specified. So, you will find that there are specified locations from where you can get in or you can get out of these systems. That is what we are talking, and we are not allowing any other thing which is going to happen on this road which otherwise you may be seeing in an urban area. And this may be catering to medium and long distance trips depending on these major cities which have been connected by this categorization. Then the another categorization here is the national highway. Now, this national highway from the very starting has been talked as a main grid of a network or the connectivity. So, everything which is going to be looked at here is being talked in terms of what is the grid of a national highway, and then it keeps overlapped with the other grids like state highway and so on. Here also the speeds are going to be high, but they are going to be up to 100 kilometers per hour. Now, these are expected to connect the capital cities of the states around each other. They are also expected to connect the ports and the major traffic generators, because the traffic is going to be moving from those or to those particular areas depending on the commodities which are coming at that location, which needs to be taken to the different parts of the country where they are having the consumption. Or we are going to connect the strategic locations looking at the strategic requirements of the country in terms of the border areas. Again, though they may not be elevated in nature, they has to be or they are expected to be raised facility. That means they should be constructed on an embankment. So, if you have a ground level something like this, it is expected that this particular road is going to be there at this particular embankment. So, there is a height difference which should be there between the ground level in the around area and this particular facility. The partial control on access is there, the reason being that when we started developing all of these things, we had no big money in hand, so that we could have created the access control on these facilities, and that is the reason you find that the sides are porous in nature and there is a possibility of a movement on the sides, and that may impact the movement on this highway on which the traffic may be moving at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. But these national highways, they fall under the responsibility of the central government, and only the central government can notify or denotify the national highways or any road in terms of a national highway, or can remove it from the grid of national highway. So, that is what is related to the national highways. So, you can understand that this is going to provide the connectivities across length and width of the country. The another category is a state highway. This is a second level of grid of connectivity, but it is of the same specifications as of national highway, and therefore, here also it is expected that the traffic is going to move at a high speed, and this high speed again is going to be up to 100 kilometers per hour, specifically in a terrain which is a plain terrain. If the terrain is changing, the topography is changing, then probably the effect is going to be there on the speeds, and that we will going to talk in one of our interactions further. Then these state highways are expected to connect the capital city of the state with the district headquarters, or the national highways which are passing in that particular area, or the highways of the adjoining states. So, this is the type of connectivity this particular grid should try to provide. These are also expected to be a raised facility on an embankment, but it may or may not be there in actual, depending on the ground realities in a particular area. They are also expected to have a partial control on access, but may not be available as such. They comes under the responsibility of the state governments, and therefore, the notification or the denotification of the road as a national as a state highway here is under the purview of the state government. I already specified that they have the same specifications as national highways. So, when we will be looking at further, we will see that NH/SH is what we will be talking. Another categorization is the district roads, and these district roads, they are basically the internal roads of an area. Therefore, the internal access within the district is being provided by them. They are related to connect all production and consumption centers, all such marketplaces which are there, they should be connected with the locations where this produce can be utilized, and if that is not there in the nearby vicinity, then we have to connect them through the national highways or state highways to the different parts of the country where these commodities can be easily consumed in that area. They should also remain functional throughout the year, and that is the same as in the case of national highways, state highways or expressways. There is no access control, the speeds are lower here as compared to the national highway or state highway, and they have been classified further as a major district roads or other district roads, which are being defined as MDR and ODR. Here you can see that this is the type of road facility which may be available in any of your area. If you try to visualize that, you will be able to identify that these are whether the major district roads or other district roads. At the moment, we are not going to talk about the kilometer stone, but that also is going to define you in terms of the color being used on that, and that probably we are going to talk in one of our other interaction. The last categorization in this highways which are passing through the rural areas is the village roads. They are expected to provide the further inner connectivity in any of the area. The speeds are going to be quite low in this case. They are going to connect the villages or the group of villages. They are going to connect it with the rivers which are passing through that particular area. They are going to connect with the market areas, or if a highway is also passing through that area, then they should also provide a connectivity to that, so that the traffic keeps moving across spaces and these villages are not become aloof or not connected in that form psychologically also. There is no access control on these roads. The width of the road is quite low, and that is okay because the amount of traffic which is going to be there on this particular road is also less, and they are also expected to be functional throughout the year. When we come to the urban road classification, then the very first thing which comes at the top is the arterial road, And these arterial roads, as you can see in this photograph, you can find that it is a divided facility where no other traffic is there, and if there is a traffic on the side which is a local in nature on this side as well as on this side. So, they have been separated out by way of providing a type of raised median on the two sides. So, that means this type of a thing is allowing you to create a high speed mobility at a high speed, which is quite high in terms of speed, in maybe something like 60 or 70 or 80 kilometers per hour. Again, when we will take up the design speeds, we will come back to this particular aspect. These are expected to connect the various spaces, and then they are going to talk about the through type of traffic, because the traffic which is moving on this road, they may not have an immediate concern with the type of development which is there on these sides. If they have an immediate concern, then there will be a point from where the traffic can get out of this system or can get into this system, and that is where the access control is one another thing which is going to be there, and this can be full or partial in sense that there can be no parking allowed on these roads or no loading and unloading is being allowed on these roads. That is what probably we are talking here. They are the primary grid at the city level. They connect the business centers, suburban centers, major generators of traffic within a city. Usually they are divided multi-lane roads. Pedestrians as such are not allowed to cross it. If they have to cross it, they have to do it at designated locations, and you will find that there are the grade separated facilities which are going to be there, through which only the pedestrians should be crossing these things. And how they are being provided in a city, at what particular spacing is being talked. If the development is a new, is sparsely developed, then it should be spaced at 8 kilometers, and if it is a developed area, then it should be 1.5 kilometers. That means we are talking about a grid like this, and if these are the roads which are arterial roads, the spacing which we are talking as this particular spacing of these roads, and of course, within these then the rest of the roads are going to be there. Now, if we look at the another one which is a sub-arterial, which is a bit lower category as compared to the arterial road. Here the mobility is going to be lower, therefore, that means the speeds are also going to be lower. When you talk about the type of traffic, the traffic which is there is again a sort of through traffic, but it is also being connecting with the distributed traffic in a particular area. So, this sort of a connectivity is trying to provide. So, it is working as a licensing between the highest facility and a facility which is at the lower level than this one. Then partial access control is another aspect here, and we talked about this partial access control in terms of parking, loading and unloading, and that needs to be regulated on these particular roads. They works as a secondary grid. Usually again they are expected to be divided carriageway systems as being shown here, but there is a lot of activity, lot of traffic, as you can see on this particular roads, which was not there on an arterial road, and that is the reason is that it is getting the traffic from the adjoining areas on this side, and this is getting into it and going out of this system also. The spacings are going to be less. It is going to be 0.5 kilometers in developed areas, and in suburban areas it is going to be 3 to 5 kilometers. That means whatever grid we created of an arterial one, now within that we are going to have another grid for the connectivities. Then we can talk about the collector road system, and this collector road system is now going at a lower level, where now we are coming basically towards the accessibility to different areas, and that is where it is a sort of a combination of mobility with accessibility. The speeds are not going to be quite high, they are going to be quite medium or less than a medium one. They works as a collector distributor system. Collector distributor system means it is collecting from the local area and it is distributing to the sub-arterial, and that is what we talked in the case of sub-arterial, that it is also taking the traffic from the distributing system, and this distributing system is coming from these collector routes. It is also going to create an connectivity between the areas where the employment zones are there. So, that sort of connectivity is probably also going to be there. No access control is there. There can be few parking or loading unloading restrictions, as you can see in a photograph here. At some of the locations the spaces are being provided where the parking can be done, but in the other locations probably it is not being provided. So, the traffic will keep moving and utilizing the whole of the carriageway being provided for that. So, this is a lower level of grid at the city level, and this can take both the shapes. It can be divided system or it can be an undivided system of a road. The lowest category in the urban area is being defined as a local street. This is something in your residential area. In a residential area, you have the houses on the two sides and the road, which can be something like maybe 5.5 meters wide or 7 meters wide or 9 meters wide. In most of the city areas, in the city development agencies, they talk in terms of 9 feet wide, 12 feet wide, 15 feet wide, 18 feet wide roads being provided in your area. That is the way they talk. We are talking here in terms of meter. So, they are going to provide the access to the residential areas or to the business location or industries in that particular area. So, those type of streets are there. The mobility is going to be quite low. That means the speeds are quite low. There is not going to be any access control in this. People are free to utilize them in any manner, but then of course, that should not create an impact to the traffic which is moving on that road. And in that sense, the parking, loading, unloadings are going to be allowed on these roads. But if it is going to create an impact to the traffic which is moving on that, then that can be regulated in a sense by way of timings or a location at which it can be done. They are undivided carriageway systems, and the type of traffic and the amount of traffic which is going to be expected on this is quite low in nature. Now, once we have talked about the various classifications of the roads, which is quite important, and we are going to carry them further in all of our discussions throughout this geometric design course, the another important factor which we are going to talk is traffic. Traffic is what we are going to control by way of the designs, and we are intent is that we should be able to provide the comfortable and efficient movement of those vehicles on the road system. Now, when you are talking about this traffic volume, though it is being talked in IRC 9, if you are interested you can look at that. This can be talked in different units or in different forms being shown here. We can talk as AADT, which is annual average daily traffic. We may be talking it in terms of only ADT, that is an average daily traffic. We may talk as a design hourly volume. We may be considering the peak hour traffic. We may be putting one more D in front of DHV, and that becomes a directional design hourly volume. We will also be looking at the composition of the traffic in terms of the type of vehicles which are there in the traffic stream. When you look at the photographs here, the top photograph you can see there is a quite less traffic which is there. This is a highway of which you are looking at here. So, when you look at this amount of traffic and you are talking about a traffic in terms of peak hour, and so probably is not a good rider or a value which you should consider, and that is where we usually talk about the daily traffic which is there in terms of the annual average daily traffic or the ADT, that means the average daily traffic. But when you look at a city road here, what you can see is the totally chalked condition during the peak time. So, whatever is this requirement of these number of vehicles which are there, we need to design for that, and that is the reason probably we need to look at the peak hour traffic, or we need to look at the design hourly volume for which we are going to provide a road system which is adequate enough to handle it, and that is what we are talking. When you see in terms of LOS, this is the good LOS which is there, but then this is a bad LOS which you are seeing in the photograph below. Now, when you are talking about these traffic volumes, let us look at few of the things here, and then maybe we will be continuing if not completed all today. So, we will be looking at in the next interaction. So, what is this AADT? What we do is that we count the traffic on a road system. So, you have a road, the traffic is moving in both the directions on this particular road. You have made a reference location, and at this reference location you are counting how many are going this way and how many are going this way, and you are not only counting the numbers, but you are also counting the types. So, this is being done 24/7 for all 365 days, and that is the type of amount of traffic which you are going to find out. And if you have this total traffic available to you, then this total traffic divided by 365 is going to give you AADT. And this is the thing which is usually used in the most of the highway designs or the high speed facilities, multi lane facilities and all those things. When you talk about only ADT, then what we do is that instead of going for 365 days, we will go only to 3 to 7 days time period, but again this is a continuous count for those 3 to 7 days, means you are doing it for 24 hours a day for these 3 to 7 days. The most optimal one is 7 days, but if it is not possible to do it for 7 days, then we go for 3 days, and these 3 days we try to do within the week time, so that there is no impact of the weekend on the traffic. So, that is how we are going to identify the days to count the traffic on that particular stretch. Whether we have done it for 3 days or 7 days, if we divide the total traffic by those number of days, we are going to get ADT, and this is useful for urban roads as well as rural highways as such. Now, when you are taking this particular traffic, as I said, we are going to talk about the types, that is what is a classified count. We have different categories of vehicle, and all these different categories of vehicles, they are going to make a difference in different forms, and that is where we have to take into consideration how many trucks, buses, LCVs, car, tractors, cycles, cycle rickshaws, etc. they have passed that area, because their performance is different, their speeds are different, the space which is being occupied by them on a road is different, and that is going to make a difference when we consider traffic in the homogeneous units, and this will be the topic of discussion in the one of the next interaction. And this particular thing is going to make an impact to the traffic flow efficiency. If more of the trucks are there, the speeds are going to be low. If more of the cycle rickshaws or cycles are there on a road, then again it may impact the speeds, or the capacity of the lane or the road is also going to be affected. If more bigger vehicles are there, then the less number of vehicles will be able to pass this section, and that is where we will say that the capacity of the road is reducing in that. At the same time, when you are talking about these, and when you are talking it is in terms of volume, then this volume is going to define whether we need to provide exclusive facility for any type of a system, say a cycle rickshaws or cycles, or we need to provide a separate system for the buses only in terms of BRT lanes. So, this is also going to come out on the basis of the classified count being done at that location. So, with this we come to an end of today's interaction, and we will be continuing with the rest of the controlling factors related to either the road system or then the external factors in the coming interactions. So, I say goodbye to you at this point, and thank you.